What's up, guys? Brian Ellwood. Welcome back to the 12 Houses to Freedom podcast. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I've got Alexander Cruz on the line today, and Alexander Cruz is a partner and also the director of acquisitions for CR of Maryland. They are a massive turnkey operation out of Baltimore. And today we're going to dig into their business, how they find deals, sales. They do tons of rehabs. We're going to talk about why their turnkey operation is different from others. So I'm really excited for this interview, and I think I'm going to learn a lot. You guys are too. So what's up, Alexander? Thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. So how'd you get into real estate?
Well, there's always a story there. Honestly, I got in by chance. I went to college and got a degree in criminology in West Virginia. It's about 4 hours away from Baltimore. And at the time when I graduated in 2011, the world was still kind of coming out of that 2008 crash. So the job market wasn't great, not a lot of options to choose from. And just by chance, my parents were about to list their house for sale. So they had the broker come out who they had worked with previously once before. And they're talking, and she's talking to me and says, "Well, what are you up to?" I said, I'm looking for work right now. So she said, "Well, why don't you come work for me? I'll pay you $20 an hour part-time." And I found out later she was kind of testing me at that point. So I did some stuff around the office, and she liked my work ethic, and she needed an assistant at that time. The position had been vacated. So that was it. She called me one morning, offered me a full-time position with a salary. It was pretty modest looking back, but I said, get your license, you can make some commission and see what happens. That was late 2011. So here I am in 2020, still in the real estate game, just on a very different path. But I gave her a lot of credit. She got me in the business, and I worked for her for a little over a year. It taught me a ton. She's been doing this at the time over 25 years. She was a really tough boss, but she taught me a ton, and again, got me to at least on the track to where I ended up to now.
And how did you get hooked up with the turnkey company and become a partner and all that?
Sure. So in the time after, I was no longer working for that broker. I was still inside the brokerage as an agent. Mm-hmm. And she called me one day and said, "Hey," and I did a smart thing, even though I didn't like working with her, or for her, I should say. I didn't mind working with her. I didn't like working for her. I also was not cut out for admin work. I figured that out.
Yeah.
I never burned the bridge though. We maintained a really good relationship. So she called me one day and said, "Hey, I've got this guy coming to the office. I've known him a long time. He's an investor. I want you to meet him. I think you guys would work well together." And that was it. So I came to the office. I met Craig, who's my business partner now. We had a long conversation. And at that time, he was really just getting his boots on the ground in Maryland. He already had a successful flipping company in Pennsylvania, but he's from Maryland and wanted to grow the same company here. So we met right at the right time. We clicked extremely well. He needed young, hungry boots on the ground, and I was more than ready and willing to jump in and go after it. So that's how we started working together, and that's how we started building our company, CR of Maryland. And at the time, our focus was fix and flip, and it was for several years after that. So we evolved into a turnkey company. We went from primarily fix and flip to then primarily buying and renovating rental properties for ourselves. That's where the partnership level really came in. And then we got into wholesale at the same time as that. And then really we didn't start turnkey until a little over a year ago. So as we reached our sort of intended goal and limit for how many rentals we would have in Baltimore, it made sense, and we got introduced to turnkey, and it just kind of all clicked. We had all the pieces in place. We have our own property management. We know how to renovate rentals. All the only difference is now we're going to sell fresh product as we finish it, as opposed to doing a cash out refi. So that's how we ended up. We weren't turnkey for many years. We were more traditional investors, but we kind of evolved to that point.
My favorite part about what you guys do is that you're helping other people create passive income and build portfolios now. So it's almost like you shifted the focus a bit away from just building our own wealth to let's also bring other people along with us. That's got to be really fulfilling.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one small part of what's fulfilling. The other really cool thing that we're really passionate about is impacting our community here. So the homes we target to buy are typically unlivable. They're neglected. They're usually vacant. They're the eyesore of the block. And so for us to go in and do a full renovation that is beautiful and has it's interior and exterior. It's not just carpet and paint. It's a new roof. It's new windows, new trim. We make our homes 100% lifetime lead free. So it really becomes one of the nicest homes on the block. And so that impacts the neighborhood. The neighbors appreciate it when it's over. They don't always like the work going on.
Right.
But then on top of that, somebody's going to move into that house that may or may not have come from the best living conditions previously. So you get to impact a lot of people with every house that we touch. And it's like you said, it's great for the back end owner as well, that we get to share the fruits of our market with them. So it's a really, really rewarding part of the business, probably far and above the most rewarding aspect that we've done, because we can impact so many people with just one house.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So what does a day in your life look like right now? What do you do from a work perspective?
Yeah, well, one thing I enjoy is that every day is a little different. And that was one thing that I've always liked about real estate is even in the admin position, there was still a lot of different stuff going on and deals falling apart or coming together. But it's still like that today, just a little bit different. So in my daily roles, I'm interacting really heavily with our acquisitions team. We have some pretty lofty goals that we need to hit every week to meet our overall goals. And then I also have a heavy interaction on our disposition side. So for the properties that we're selling, I am the main contact for our owners when we sell. So I'm heavily involved with them. And then everywhere in between. So we have a great construction team. I talk the most with our head of construction about the statuses of different jobs and things going on. And then also just interact heavily with the other departments in our company, including contract to close, property management, because again, we're working with the owners all the way in the back end once they own the house, and then our leadership team. So every day is a little different. Sometimes I'm on the road. I do work from home a lot, and then also in the office a good amount as well.
Awesome, man. So for acquisition, you have some sales guys that you are over, and for disposition, you sell the properties directly to the buyers. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. On acquisitions, it's almost two different departments in a way. So we have what we call on-market acquisitions, and that is headed up by Lauren, who works for us. And her job is literally to be at the computer all day, every day, digging for deals. So anything on the MLS, the auction sites. She also spends a lot of time on Facebook and all the local investor groups for people posting wholesale deals. And all day long, she's looking for potential homes, running the numbers on them. If they're anywhere close to a deal, she'll dispatch our estimator to actually walk the house, confirm the rehab number, and then bring it to me and say, they're asking this price, I think we should offer this, and I'll okay the deal. So that's on market. And then off market, we have our own marketing that everybody does now. Mail, SEO, pay-per-click, Facebook, etc. Any leads that come in, I'll review them with our ISA. We'll assign one of our acquisitions agents, and then they'll go try to get the house under contract. So those are our two channels. They really are kind of separate in a way, but I oversee them, and then we decide what to do with the house when we get it under contract.
Nice. And out of all the different channels and the on market versus off market, what would you say are the best things that are working for you guys right now from a marketing perspective?
It kind of seems to change every month. I think the most important thing is consistency. And then consistency in what we're doing, and then also consistency in follow-up. Because it's oftentimes somebody will call in and they're really just starting their process. So you might not get them on that first appointment or even that first week. Sometimes it's a month or 2 months later. Everybody's a little bit different. So those are the biggest things. We've had to build out our systems more. We actually implemented Salesforce, which took a long time to implement, but now that it's up and running is awesome as our CRM. So consistency is the biggest thing. But outside of that, the things that drive the biggest returns are also probably the most expensive. So we do still do mail. We've reduced it over time, but getting lists updated, and doing follow-up calls outside of that. And then our SEO and pay-per-click is pretty consistent as well.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you have KPIs for like your cost per lead for all the different like SEO versus PPC versus direct mail? Do you know about what you're paying for a lead right now for those channels?
Man. So yes, we do have the data. I'm not great at it off the top of my head, but it's probably honestly for leads that actually get converted, it ends up costing, I think, somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a lead. I shouldn't say a lead.
To get a
$2,000
deal.
to $3,000 a deal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a deal. Not for per lead. Yep.
Yeah. And that I've seen that too. And I think that holds a lot of people back because, they'll spend like $500 on direct mail and be like, dude, I only got 5 calls. 3 of them were like, take me off your list.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I'm not going to do it anymore. But it's like, you got to spend a few grand to get a deal, but you end up getting the deal for maybe 10 or 15K cheaper than you would have gotten it if you got it like listed or from a wholesaler or something.
Yep.
So you're still actually saving money in the end.
Yep. It's a hard barrier for sure. And it didn't used to be like that. I mean, there was a time probably in 2014, somewhere in that range, I'll say when we were still relatively young in our business, relative is the word there. But we could buy most of our deals on the MLS. And slowly that changed. It just got more and more competitive. Prices kept going up. And then we're like, oh man, we probably need to start marketing. And luckily we knew some people in the industry and kind of got a jump start on it. But we've ever since then, probably 2014 or 15, we've been marketing for seller leads. So it's been a long time, a long thing that we've been processing and developing.
Are the Facebook ads pulling for you okay?
No. Ever since they changed, and don't quote me on the exact terminology here, but they changed something in the way they structured it maybe a year or two ago. So we still do a little bit and a little bit of boosting here and there, but it's not like it used to be. We used to have a great success from Facebook. It was inexpensive and we got some really good leads. But when they changed some of their targeting and rules and stuff, it really has died down a lot.
Got it. Yeah, I think the market is just so competitive and crazy right now that marketing has evolved into like a bit of a shit show. It's just like hustle and do everything you can and make tons of offers. And, especially if you want to do deals at volume like you guys do, a lot of people listening to this would be happy with, maybe buying 5 houses a year as from a rental property.
Sure.
But if you want volume, I can imagine it's gotten pretty difficult to find deals the way the market is right now, especially with COVID and everything else.
It's definitely challenging. We're fortunate that we have so many exit strategies. We can of course do a regular wholesale. We can buy it for our turnkey model, but that's a very narrow buy box. We're very selective on what we'll buy for that. We can buy it and flip it, whether that's doing a minor flip or a major overhaul. And then actually we also have a retail real estate team, so we can list homes too. And then we also have a short sale guru for people that are upside down and just can't get out from under it. So just about every lead we do have a potential exit strategy for. But obviously even then you still have tire kickers and people that aren't ready to go or whatever the situation is. So it's never 100% or anywhere near it.
Totally. So let's talk about sales a little bit.
Sure.
You're over sales. What are some of the best sales tips or tricks or techniques that you found that work really well to close more deals?
And I guess it doesn't matter. I was going to say, do you mean with sellers or if we're selling a property or what?
Let's talk about with sellers, because most of the people listening to this are really just trying to buy rentals for themselves and they're marketing direct to seller.
Yeah. I think so we have spent a lot of time. I'll give a plug for a guy that we've spent a lot of money with. You probably have heard of John Martinez. Has done a lot of investor training. We spent a ton of time and money with him. I've been to the boot camp twice.
Oh, sweet.
He's awesome. They do a really good job. So I'm not copying what he's saying, but what I've learned is it's really all about being a problem solver. So, okay, one way to buy a house is just to outbid everybody, right? But that's probably not a great recipe for success.
Yeah.
The key is really becoming a problem solver and understanding and getting the seller to talk to you about what their pain is, and then being able to solve that pain. And of course, we're talking about motivated sellers. If you have a guy that is a conventional home seller, the house is in phenomenal shape, and he's going to buy another house, but he doesn't even need to sell this one, he's not very motivated, right? He's pretty conventional. But if you're talking to somebody that has an estate that they inherited and the house needs a lot of work, there's no mortgage on it or a very small mortgage, but they might not have the funds to fix up the house or get it ready for sale. They're pretty motivated. They don't want to deal with it. They probably got their own life going on. So the advice, the best thing I've learned is getting them talking about why they're selling and what their motivation is and how it's affecting them. And then when they're really in that emotional state, that's the time where I'll say they're more open to making a deal that probably works better as an acquisition. So that's the biggest thing. And you got to be flexible, patient, understanding. And then of course you got to be honest, right? You can't lie to people. You need to treat people right. It should be a no-brainer, but we are surprised, but we're not surprised when we hear horror stories from sellers and how they've been mistreated by other investors. So you got to treat people like they should be treated. So do those things, it's going to go a long way.
That's awesome. It's funny. We used to have a big wholesale flip operation in Nashville, and we hired John to train our acquisition guys back in the day. And then he was in a mastermind with me for a while. He's been on this podcast, and so I'm definitely drinking the John Martinez Kool-Aid as well.
He's awesome. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah,
I love how his approach is very much like, just let's get on the phone and see if this would be a good fit or not. Not a big deal either way. I'm just going to help advise you on the best decision for you to make, which is such a refreshing take on sales. And we actually on the podcast interview for my show talked about how sales has evolved over the years or decades, because it used to be like boiler room, like, you just grind the phone and just hustle, or you're like real aggressive and high pressure. But what works nowadays, at least what I've seen, which sounds like what you're saying, is it's like a consultative approach to sales, where you're actually, imagine this, being honest and being real and doing what's best for people. It's like, imagine that. It's funny that's what sales has evolved to. It's like, it should have been that way all along, but maybe people are just kind of awakening to a higher way to approach the whole thing nowadays.
It is, It's my favorite analogy or thing that he talks about is when you walk up to a car dealership, what's the first thing you say when they walk out to you? I'm just looking, right?
I'm fine. I'm just looking. Yeah.
Your defense walls are up. If they would walk up to you and say, no problem, take your time, you don't need to buy a car. I'm okay if you don't buy a car. Just give me a holler if you have any questions or if I can help you. That would relax everybody so much more. I don't think car dealers have caught on to that yet. But we teach our people when they're on the phone with a seller and then also in person, tell them it's okay. You don't have to make a deal. It's okay if we leave here today. You don't have to sell me your house. You're not obligated, right? You got to get the defense barriers down a little bit. And of course we hope to buy the house if it makes sense. But I'm sure they wouldn't expect us to buy it if it didn't make sense for us, and vice versa. It's got to work for everybody. So I tell them that it needs to be a win-win.
Yeah. Or they'll be like, the house is in great shape. And you're like, well, it's such a nice house. Why don't you just list it with a realtor? Right. I remember when John told us to say that, I was like, no, don't say that.
Right.
Because then you're going to like give them the idea and then they won't sell it to you. But that's such a stupid notion, because if they were going to sell it to a realtor, they would just do that. They're going to do it anyways. There's nothing you can do on the phone to change that.
You don't have to convince them not to sell it to a realtor. They're going to, when you say that line, they're going to tell you why they don't want to list with a realtor. And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Or they'll say, yeah, I probably am going to list it with a realtor. And then you just immediately know. Whereas we used to not say that. And then we would follow up with them for 6 months and waste all this time. And then they sold it with a realtor.
Yeah,
we could have found out on the first conversation if they were going to do that or not, just by freaking asking it. So
right,
it's funny.
It's good stuff.
Cool, man. What about so we talked about marketing, sales. Let's talk about rehabs. You guys do a lot of rehabs. What did you say the average dollar amount was?
Yeah, so on our turnkey product, our average rehab cost is over 75K per house.
Okay.
Before, and it's kind of historical. So before we were in the turnkey business, we really made our name locally for doing high-end renovations, like every single detail. We did everything from little homes to 1.5 million homes, which here is like a mega mansion, 8,000 square feet, and then everything in between. So we were really known for that. And we didn't want to lose that in our when we started doing rental properties. It was still the same approach. We want to rehab it to be as nice as it can and should be. And then in theory, that's going to attract more tenants because everybody wants to live in a nice house. And then they'll probably want to stay because they have one of the nicest homes. And we found that worked really, really well. So it's the same approach still now that it was when we started buying rentals for ourselves. And not only that, when you upgrade and redo all the mechanicals, so the roof, the HVAC, the electric, the plumbing, 9 times out of 10 for us, those are completely redone. We don't keep any old electrical junky systems. They get ripped out. It's a brand new rewire. When you do all that, the product is very predictable. Your maintenance costs are going to be low for years to come. There's no deferred maintenance. And again, so as we built our portfolio, what we really quickly learned was you can't try to save money on the rehab. It's just going to cost you money very shortly after. It's a funny story we tell. His street name had a very unique name. It was like Princess Anne. And my partner back then was much more involved in the day-to-day. So he bought this house and he said, no, the AC is good. We're going to keep it. And found out like when we finished it, the AC was like 15 years old. And we're like, what are you doing? And then, he thought it looked much newer. He didn't actually know the age, of course. It did look good, but then within like 3 months, the AC blew up, and we're like, we're never doing that again. If it's anywhere older than 5 years old, just replace it now. So it's going to last 15, 20 years, whatever the number is. Our cash flow is intact. You don't need to worry about it. So that's what we learned by doing it ourselves. There's a lot of things we learned, but that's what's led to this approach where we would prefer a house that needs everything, so we can just do it once, do it our way, and then we know it's going to be consistent at the end.
That's funny about the AC because I've done that before too, especially back in my more like novice days. I would literally be like, it looks good. Like, but somebody could literally have like spray painted the unit and make it look new. But I didn't actually. And then my business partner would be like, well, did you look at when you were there taking pictures, did you take a picture of the little thing on the AC that tells when it was built? I was like, nah, I didn't do that. But it looked pretty good.
It looks really good. I think it'll be fine. Yeah.
It's the cover was shiny. It's pretty funny. So 75K, that's a big number. And I've experienced that too. I've done like full gut rehabs on some of the rentals that I have. And it's been years and years, and I haven't heard a single peep about there being anything wrong with the house.
Sure.
So you're totally right about that. The one like objection that's popping up in my head is like, damn, I wish I could find deals cheap enough to where I could afford to put everything into it and still make it into like a cash flow rental. So how are you guys able to do that?
Yeah, so part of that is a market condition. So in our market, homes are the majority of townhomes are built between 1900 and 1960, let's say, in that range. Mm-hmm. So they're old enough that you can actually spend 75. If we went to a neighborhood that was all built in the 90s, you really can't spend 75. Like it doesn't make sense in that model. But we're fortunate to be in a market where the housing stock is older and we're able to spend that kind of money. And there's a large enough spread in these neighborhoods from the worst home to the fully renovated home. So you can buy an uninhabitable house for 40 that needs a full rehab, spend that 75, and then sell it for 160. That's, I think, a little bit unique. It's definitely not like that everywhere in the country. But in our market that works and it makes sense. And it's a neighborhood where it's all residential. There's other renovation activity, other rehabs that have sold in that 160 range. So it's a stabilized area, and it's where homeowners want to be. So if there's homeowners that want to be there and it's a majority homeowner area, it's where the renters want to be as well. and they rent really, really fast. So I think we're a little fortunate. I didn't choose to be born here, but I was, and ended up in real estate here. And luckily, this market works really well for this model.
Yeah, I think you need to be in a pretty cheap market, just not like in terms of the, like the construction of the house, but cheap in terms of the price, just because
Yeah.
the way the market is right now. Like, it's hard to make the numbers work. If you have, like, almost, I can get on Zillow and just look at what's listed. Like,
Yep.
I'll just sort it low to high. And if there's nothing under 100 grand on the MLS, I'm kind of like, this market would be tough to make it work as a rental market,
Yep.
because if the houses are over 100, right off the bat, they're probably not going to rent for enough as those prices go up.
Yep.
So, I have to admit, sometimes when I look at people who are in markets where there's just 30K houses everywhere, I'm a little bit jealous. You know what I mean? But there's nothing stopping me from going there either.
Yeah, and they're not everywhere. It's still
Right.
very competitive. I mean, there's a lot of investors not necessarily doing turnkey, but doing fix and buy and flip. Or oh my gosh, can't talk. Fix and flip and rentals here as well. So it's super competitive. And we don't even go to auctions anymore. We stopped going like 2 years ago because there'd be 80 people outside, and the number would always go to sky high, and it was like there's no point.
Yeah.
So, but it's a numbers game. For whatever reason, the in-person auctions got really crazy, but by being consistent and doing the online auctions, you don't win them all. In a week, we expect to walk 40 homes, make roughly 30 offers, and of the 30, we're hoping to get 3. If we get 3 out of 30, we're like high-fiving. That's awesome.
Okay.
Some weeks you get 1, other weeks you get lucky and you get 5. It's just we got to be consistent every single week to hit our overall goals. So
Nice.
that's part of what we track. Yep.
Man, I hope you guys are taking that to heart, because that's exactly what I teach too. Is like the lead indicator to getting deals is making offers. That's the thing you can control. You can't necessarily control if someone accepts your offer, but you can control how many you make. And in order to make 30 offers, you've got to go walk 40 homes, because only 75% of them will qualify. It sounds like you're maybe getting about a 10% acceptance rate on the offers. That's exactly what I teach. Make 10 offers to get 1 deal. So that's huge right there, because I'll like, if you're listening to this podcast and you wish that, we would coach you and figure out what you're doing wrong, we would probably, Zoom you in to this Zoom call, and we'd say, cool, how many offers have you made this week? And if you're like most people I talk to, no offense to you, you'd probably say, well, I haven't made any, right? I've been looking around, I haven't made any offers. If you make 0 offers, you can literally expect 0 deals.
You know exactly what you're going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. You guys, it sounds like you guys have a very dialed in process, and you know what your lead indicators are, and that's why you guys are successful.
Yeah. We really started that last year. We implemented EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System.
Yeah.
And that's where we finally got super serious about all of our metrics in every department and how they feed the overall goal. And we measure them every week. So yeah, that's awesome when I hear you say lead indicator and lag indicators, of course, how many did we close on and things like that. It's definitely, it's awesome. It's changed our business for sure. So yeah.
It's a small world, like you're saying, John Martinez, now EOS, because in the same mastermind I was in with John, EOS came and did like a 2-day workshop with everyone. And I've read their books and stuff. I haven't like worked with a coach one-on-one, but their system is pretty awesome. So that's cool, man. Let's talk about, you mentioned prior to us starting this call, we could talk about why our turnkey company is different from others. I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I try to boil it down to 3 simple things. So one is just our market. You mentioned price point earlier. It's a great price point to buy, and it's also a great price point to rent to our favor. The rent prices here are pretty high. So we're almost a perfect 1-to-1. If you're looking at a 160 house, it probably rents for $1,500. That stops when you get to about the $200,000 price point. You can have a 230 house, and it probably only rents for 19, maybe 2,000.
Yeah.
So the higher in price you go, the further away you get from that ratio. But in the market we're in, which is 140 to 200, it aligns really well. It's a great cash flow market. And then on top of that, it's some modest appreciation too. About 3 to 6% is typically what we see. Again, you're not hitting appreciation home runs like you are in maybe Atlanta, but you probably don't have any cash flow in Atlanta. So I'm not picking on anybody from Atlanta. It's just what I've learned.
Yeah.
The numbers are great. I really enjoy that part of it. Of course, everybody likes making money. Aside from that, we've already kind of covered the renovations. A lot of turnkey companies that we talk to in various places of the country and different networks that we're in, they always refer to like these minimum standards. We hate that. We don't even want to talk about minimum standards. That's to us a negative. If you're buying a rental property with a minimum 5-year life on the roof, how many years are you actually getting out of that roof, and how's that going to impact your rental for the next 5 or 10 years? And same with the HVAC or whatever part of the house it is. So we really don't like minimums. We really want to exceed and really just set a higher standard. So we feel pretty confident that our renovations do that. The third part of why I tell people they should work with us is our property management team. So what makes us a little unique here is we are the property manager. There's no third party involved. And our property management department has been built over time first for us. So if there's anybody that you want looking after your property, it's people that are in the market, they have their own rentals there, and they've gone through their own trial and error of what works and what doesn't work. So there's never going to be a rookie mistake. There's never going to be a house that isn't something we would invest in because we already have, and we probably have a rental right around the corner. So it's very predictable, and we're very extremely dialed in, almost obsessive, I would say it sometimes, to the numbers and the performance. And then the last part of that is that's truly we have a vested interest in your success. We're not handing you off to somebody else who doesn't know about the renovation or doesn't care about the relationship. We're in it for the long run. So those are the three things that I really dial in on what makes us unique as a turnkey provider.
That's awesome, man. And I like the fact that you guys put an average of $75K into the house. I would love buying one of your properties knowing that the electrical and the plumbing are done. There's a new HVAC, new roof, because that really like leaves nothing to break at that point. And I think one of the smart things you guys have done is you found like a class of assets where it's like a certain age that you can get at a certain price, and then you can get it cheap enough because it needs so much work. So you get it for cheaper, but you want to do all that work anyways because you guys really care about your product. And then you end up with equity. You could sell it. I think there's a takeaway for all you guys out there listening is like, if you want to end up with better properties, then go after older, cheaper homes that you can do more work to, versus it's making me think about my criteria. And maybe I need to shave off some of the newer homes and look for stuff that I can update more thoroughly.
Sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you.
Cool, man. Do you have any, I always like to ask people about mindset, because you obviously seem like a motivated guy who gets up and crushes it. And do you have a morning routine or any books or any mindset things that you'd like to talk about, or you feel like have given you an edge or made a difference in your life?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I love that. And I do wake up in the morning, even if I had a couple of drinks the night before, might be a little groggy, but like I'm ready to rock. Because one of the things that I've trained myself to remember is you only have so many days, and every day that you waste puts you further and further away from what your end goal may be. So I'm just really big on not wasting time. And that doesn't mean you don't have social time and family time, because that's time well spent too. But you've really got to commit to building your business. And it's hard to do that if you're like, I'm only going to work 9 to 5. So that's, I touched on a couple different things there, but I just started reading Good to Great, so I can't really comment too much on that book. The other book I'm thinking of, I'm drawing a total blank on the name, is the guy who trained Michael Jordan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not. And
Watched the documentary recently. Have you seen it?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. I loved it.
Was he on that documentary?
He was interviewed at one point. Yeah, he was
Okay.
his longtime trainer. I'm gonna actually see if I can pull it up while I'm here. But it talks about a lot about Michael Jordan, and then several other big athletes he's worked with, like Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant.
Oh,
And these
cool.
guys, they're the best because they're talented, which you may or may not have talent, but B, they work really, really hard. Actually, the book is Relentless. It just came to me. So I was going to
Yeah,
say,
I'm writing
C
that
is like
down.
they have the killer mentality. They are relentless. They're obsessed. They just never stop, and they don't take days off, and they don't waste time. They agree to a diet plan and they stick to it, whatever it may be. They agree to a new workout regimen. They stick to it, and that's why they've been so great in their world and in their sports. But that's true in business too. There's people like that. We don't always watch them on TV, but it's applicable to everything in life. So Tim Grover is his name. It just came to me. It's an awesome book, and the stories in it are great too. But there's some really important lessons that I picked out, and I kind of heard already. I've been fortunate to have some great coaches in my life. I'm fortunate my business partner is an awesome guy, extremely hard worker, and has shown and taught me a lot. But it's all about the mentality. If you don't have the right mentality, you're really going to limit what your success is. And that's part of what we've been talking about as we try to decide what to do next, and approaching it with that mentality and setting goals that almost sound impossible, but actually can be done. So we were discussing it actually earlier today at lunch. When we first started renovating rentals and growing our property management, we started from scratch. We had zero, and we brought in Brock, who is my business partner's son. We're all three of us are business partners now. He headed up property management. We had no idea what we were doing. So it's trial by error. At that time, having 300 rental properties sounded impossible and overwhelming. We're like, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. But we've been there now for over a year, and looking back, you grow and you do the right things along the way. Of course, you make mistakes and you learn from them. All of a sudden that goal is like in the rear view, and now it's bigger goals. What are we going to do next? How are we going to keep growing? How are we going to expand?
Wow.
So it's a lot of it's mentality related and work ethic related, though. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, you're totally right, man. All the strategies we've talked about on this interview are useless if you're not getting anything done every day, or if you don't want it bad enough.
Yeah.
Watching that documentary, like, there was a point where Michael Jordan was talking with like the head coach of North Carolina, and I think the coach was just like, "Hey, are you?" I think he said something like, "I don't know if you're cut out for this or that, and I don't know if you're going to be good enough." And Jordan was like, "Oh, I'll show you. I will outwork every single person."
Right.
Like something changed in him, and he started working harder than anyone else. And even when he got to the Bulls, like the Bulls were a terrible team, and there was that part where he says he goes into like the hotel room and all the Bulls are in there like partying, doing drugs, and there's girls in there and stuff. He's like, "I'm out of here," and he turned around and left because he was there to work and turn the team around. And he did, and he became the leader. And now everyone's looking at him as a role model, and he pulled a lot of those guys along to all those championships.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how big of a difference that makes. The more I go, the more I realize that it's me and how I show up every day that is the biggest needle mover.
That's it. Yeah. It's nobody else holding you back, and if it truly is somebody holding you back, you got to change that. So it's still
totally
up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, thanks for doing this interview. This has been extremely valuable. For people that are hearing about you and your company, they're interested in checking out your properties, they want to learn more about you and what you do, where should they go?
Sure. So our website is crofmaryland.com. So C is in Charlie, R is in Roger, O is in Oscar, F is in Frank, and then maryland.com. If you get to the website, on the left-hand side, there's a tab that says Turnkey Investments. That'll click you over to our Turnkey page where you can view our past properties. You can also sign up there, which is what I would recommend, so we can get you on our database. We can set up a phone call to learn more about each other and discuss things further. So everything's available there. We will have more properties being posted there, but typically they sell before they ever even get to the website. So the best way is definitely to get in touch and set up a call.
Awesome, man. And I'll put the link to your website in the show notes. And
Awesome.
Thanks again for being on, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Go out there, be like Michael Jordan, and crush it. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.